I said leave. You poor people think every business is a charity organization. You come here every day looking for pity. If you can't afford my work, go somewhere else. If you are looking for free work, go to that one that is Mother Teresa. I no come this market to look on her face. I can't find money.
There are moments in life that decide your future. Not because you recognize them, but because you don't. Sometimes, destiny doesn't arrive wearing expensive clothes. Sometimes, it wears worn-out slippers, an old wrapper, and a faded wig. The person standing before you may look ordinary, but the opportunity they carry is anything but ordinary. It was another busy Tuesday morning at Beauty Line Market in Enugu. The roadside was alive with noise. Generators rumbled, hair dryers hummed. Women chatted while getting their hair braided. Traders shouted across the street. Customers moved from one umbrella to another, looking for the best hairstylist. Among the many roadside salons sat Sandra. Once upon a time, Sandra owned one of the biggest and most successful salons in the city. Today, she worked beneath a faded blue umbrella with an old styling chair and a cracked mirror. Life had changed, and so had she. Sandra no longer smiled the way she used to. Every disappointment had made her harder. Every setback had made her angrier. Bitterness had slowly become part of her personality. If you enjoy powerful stories with shocking twists, life lessons, and satisfying karma, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next amazing story. Let me know where you're watching from so we know how far our stories are reaching. People who saw Sandra and Chidera by the roadside believed they had always been rivals. What they didn't know was that years earlier, they had once shared the same dream. 8 years before. Earlier, a young Chidera walked into one of Enugu's most respected beauty salons, Madame Bose's Beauty Empire. She was shy, quiet, determined. Hairdressing wasn't just a career, it was her dream. Only a few days later, another apprentice arrived. Her name was Sandra. Sandra was talented, confident, fearless, and extremely competitive. From the very beginning, she wanted to be the best. Not just good, better than everyone, especially Chidera. The two young women trained together for 4 long years. They learned every aspect of professional hairstyling. Braiding, hair coloring, bridal styling, wig making, hair treatment, customer service, business management. Madame Bose treated both of them like daughters. But as time passed, she noticed something troubling. Whenever Chidera received praise, Sandra became uncomfortable. If Chidera mastered a hairstyle first, Sandra refused to sleep until she could do it faster. If customers complimented Chidera, Sandra secretly tried winning those same customers over. Competition slowly became jealousy. Jealousy slowly became entitlement. Sandra genuinely believed she deserved success more than anyone else. Meanwhile, Chidera remained focused only on improving herself. She celebrated other people's victories. She never saw life as a competition. Madame Bose often watched them quietly. One evening, she called both ladies into her office. She looked at them and said, "Never forget this. Your hands may bring customers into your salon, but your character is what keeps them there." Chidera wrote those words inside her notebook. Sandra smiled politely, but deep inside, she dismissed them. To her, talent was everything. 4 years later, graduation day finally arrived. Madame Bose proudly handed both women their certificates. With years of savings and support from family, they each rented their own salon. Coincidentally, the only available shops were beside each other. Customers nicknamed them the Twin Queens of Beauty Street. Business was excellent. Wedding bookings filled their calendars. Celebrities became regular customers. Money flowed. Life was good. Until one terrible night, everything disappeared. A faulty electrical connection sparked inside the plaza after closing hours. Within minutes, the entire building was engulfed in flames. Luxury salon chairs burnt, imported dryers melted, human hair worth millions was destroyed. Certificates, equipment, furniture, everything gone before sunrise. Neither woman recovered financially. With no other options, Sandra and Chidera rented tiny roadside spaces beneath umbrellas. Ironically, they were still beside each other, just as they had always been. Only this time, instead of air-conditioned salons, traffic noise became their background music, and survival became their daily goal. Yet, while they shared the same tragedy, they chose completely different responses. Sandra allowed bitterness to become her identity. Chidera allowed hope to become her strength. Every evening after work, while Sandra complained about life, Chidera quietly returned home, opened a notebook, and continued planning the salon she believed she would own again someday. She called it Project New Beginning. While Chidera and Sandra struggled to survive beneath roadside umbrellas, there was another woman who was living a completely different life. Her name was Madame Vivian. To the world, she was one of Africa's most successful businesswomen, founder of Cole Beauty International, a beauty empire with luxury salons, cosmetic brands, beauty academies, and manufacturing companies spread across several African countries. Business magazines called her the Queen of African Beauty. Television stations competed to interview her. Politicians sought her partnership. Young entrepreneurs admired her success. But there was one part of Vivian's life almost nobody knew. 28 years earlier, Vivian had not been rich. She had been a poor apprentice hairstylist. After losing both of her parents before the age of 20, she almost abandoned her training because she could no longer pay her apprenticeship fees. Then, one afternoon, an elderly woman she had never met walked into the salon. The woman quietly settled every outstanding payment, bought Vivian her first professional styling kit, and left without telling anyone her name. She never asked for recognition. She never returned. She simply changed someone's life and disappeared. Vivian never forgot her. That day, she made herself a promise. If I ever become successful, I will become the kind of blessing that never waits to be asked. And she kept that promise. Every few months, Vivian left behind the expensive cars, the bodyguards, the luxury suits, and the cameras. She dressed like an ordinary market woman, sometimes an elderly widow, sometimes a cleaner, sometimes a roadside trader. Not because she wanted to test people, but because she believed something very simple. People reveal their true character when they believe you have nothing to offer them. Over the years, she secretly paid hospital bills, sponsored children's education, settled business debts, built homes for widows, helped struggling entrepreneurs start over. Thousands of lives had been transformed through her generosity. Yet, very few people knew her face. She never wanted gratitude. She only wanted to make a difference. One Tuesday afternoon, in her usual manner when she is about to change someone's life, she decided to go to the beauty line. She arrived at Beauty Line Market wearing a faded Ankara wrapper, old rubber slippers, an inexpensive synthetic wig, and carrying a small nylon bag. To everyone else, she looked like another poor elderly woman trying to survive. No security followed her, no cameras, no announcements, just one woman walking quietly through the market. She greeted several traders politely. Some ignored her, some greeted her back. She observed every hairstylist before making her choice. Then, she stopped in front of Sandra's roadside salon. Sandra was attending to a customer. Without looking up,
she asked impatiently. "What do you want?" The elderly woman smiled warmly. "My daughter, I've been saving for a long time, but my money is not complete. I want to look beautiful again." Sandra looked up briefly, then frowned. "The hairstyle you need isn't cheap." The woman nodded gently. "I know. I don't have much." Sandra sighed loudly. Then the elderly woman asked one simple question. "If someone could make today a better day for you, what would make you happy?" Sandra immediately misunderstood. She laughed sarcastically. "So now you are asking me questions instead of paying? I don't have time for this." The woman remained calm. "I only meant," Sandra stood up abruptly. "I said leave. You people think every business is a charity. If you don't have money, stop disturbing people who are trying to work." Customers nearby turned to watch. Sandra pointed toward Chidera's stand. "Go somewhere else." The elderly woman quietly lowered her head. "I'm sorry for disturbing you." She turned and slowly walked away. Sandra shook her head. "These beggars are becoming too comfortable." She sat back down, never realizing she had just sent away the woman who had built one of the largest beauty businesses on the continent. Across the roadside, another pair of eyes had witnessed everything. Those eyes belonged to Chidera. And without knowing it, the biggest moment of her life was only just beginning. Some opportunities arrive with contracts, some arrive with handshakes, and some arrive carrying a worn-out nylon bag. The difference is that only a few people recognize them. As the elderly woman slowly walked away from Sandra's roadside salon, a gentle voice called after her, "Mama?" The elderly woman stopped and turned. Standing a few meters away was Chidera. She smiled warmly. "Please, come over here. You've been standing in the sun." She smiled and followed her. Chidera led her to the only customer chair she had. "Mama, please sit." She poured her a bottle of cold water from the small cooler she kept beneath her table. "Drink this first." The elderly woman accepted it and said, "Thank you." She never imagined she was speaking to one of the richest women in Africa. Chidera gently removed the old synthetic wig. It was tangled, the lace was torn, the hair had become rough from years of use. Instead of complaining, she carefully cleaned it, brushed it, conditioned it. Then she began styling it as though it were a brand new luxury wig. Madame V watched quietly, then asked, "Do you handle every customer's hair like this?" Chidera smiled and said, "Every woman deserves to leave my chair feeling beautiful, whether she's paying 1,000 naira or 100,000 naira. Vivian lowered her eyes. She had heard many beautiful speeches before, but she had learned to trust actions more than words. As Chidera walked, they talked about life, about disappointments, about starting over. Vivian finally asked, "My daughter, how long have you been working here?" Chidera smiled faintly. "Almost 2 years." "You were never able to reopen your salon?" Chidera shook her head. "No, but I believe I will." Vivian looked around the tiny roadside space. "You still believe?" "I have to. If I stop believing, then the fire would have destroyed more than my salon. It would have destroyed me." Vivian said nothing. She simply listened. After a long silence, Vivian asked another question. "If someone decided to invest in you today, what exactly would you do?" Chidera didn't answer immediately. Instead, she bent down and pulled out a thick brown notebook from beneath her table. The cover read, "Project New Beginning." She placed it in Vivian's hands. "I've been preparing." Vivian slowly opened it. The first page contained a sketch of a modern salon. The next page listed professional equipment. Then came financial projections, monthly operating costs, staff salaries, marketing strategies, training programs for young girls who could not afford beauty school, expansion plans, community outreach, a 5-year vision. Everything was written with remarkable detail. Vivian turned page after page in complete silence. Finally, she looked up. "You did all this?" Chidera nodded. "I don't know when my opportunity will come, but when it does, I want to be ready." Vivian closed the notebook gently. When Chidera finished styling the wig, Vivian looked into the mirror. For a long moment, she simply stared. Then tears filled her eyes. "I haven't felt this beautiful in years." Chidera smiled. "You've always been beautiful, Mama. I only helped you see it again." Vivian reached into her nylon bag and brought out a few crumpled Naira notes. "This is all I have." Chidera gently pushed the money back into her hand. "No, please keep it. You'll need it more than I do." Vivian looked at her in disbelief. "But you spent hours walking." Chidera smiled. "I learned something from my mother before she died. When God gives you the opportunity to be kind, don't calculate the cost." Vivian's eyes became moist. Across the road, Sandra had been watching everything. She laughed loudly. "So, now you're walking for free?" Several traders chuckled. Sandra folded her arms. "That's exactly why you're still poor. You'll never make it in business if you keep doing charity." Chidera ignored her. She simply packed away her combs. Vivian quietly stood. Before leaving, she held Chidera's hands. "My daughter, you've given me far more than a hairstyle today. You've reminded me that good people still exist." Chidera smiled. "I only did what anyone should do." Vivian looked at her one last time and smiled. A smile that suggested she had already made a decision. She quietly picked up her nylon bag, walked away from the market, and disappeared into the crowd. Chidera watched her leave, completely unaware that woman was about to change her life forever. Some meetings last only a few hours, yet they divide your life into 2 parts, before and after. Chidera never imagined that the events of that ordinary Tuesday would change her life forever. 3 weeks passed. Life continued as though nothing had happened. Every morning, Sandra still arrived before sunrise. She still complained about customers. She still mocked Chidera whenever she saw her writing in her notebook. "You're wasting your time," she would say. "Dreams don't pay rent." Chidera never argued. She simply smiled and kept preparing. She believed that one day, preparation would meet opportunity. She just didn't know when. Then, one Thursday morning, one black SUV drove into the market. Then another pulled up behind it. Security vehicles also accompanied them. The market women on the streets were looking and wondering which politician came to their market. Customers abandoned their seats, traders left their shops. Everyone wondered the same thing. Who is coming here? Some assumed it was the governor. Others whispered that it must be a celebrity. Sandra quickly adjusted her blouse. She arranged her wigs neatly. She smiled for the first time in weeks. If an important person is coming, they'll definitely choose my stand. Chidera continued braiding a little girl's hair. She barely looked up. Whatever was happening, she wasn't expecting anything. A long black luxury SUV stopped directly in front of the roadside market. The driver stepped out. Then security officers opened the rear door. A sophisticated woman slowly stepped out. Elegant. Diamond earrings, dark sunglasses. Some of the hairstylists recognized her. "It's Vivian Cole, the CEO of Cole Beauty International,
the queen of African beauty. The market erupted. People pushed forward. Phones came out. Everyone wanted a picture. Sandra's eyes widened. She had seen Vivian on television countless times, but never in real life. She quickly stepped forward. "Welcome, Ma. My stand is right here. We'll be honored to serve you." Vivian didn't even look at her. Instead, she slowly removed her sunglasses, then began walking past Sandra, past several other hairstylists, until she stopped in front of Chidera. The entire market fell silent. Chidera stood up politely. "Good morning, Ma." Vivian smiled warmly. "You still don't recognize me?" Chidera looked carefully. Something about her smile felt familiar. Vivian reached into her handbag. She pulled out an old synthetic wig. The same faded wig, the same one Chidera had restored 3 weeks earlier. Then everything came rushing back. The notebook, the conversation. Chidera covered her mouth in shock. "Mama!" Vivian smiled. Yes. Sandra's heart stopped. Her knees suddenly felt weak. The old woman, the woman she had insulted, the woman she had chased away, was Vivian Cole. The people around became completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Sandra replayed every word she had said that day. "Leave my shop. Go somewhere else. You poor people." Every insult echoed inside her head. She wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. Vivian finally turned to face everyone. "I came here 3 weeks ago, not as Vivian Cole, but as an ordinary woman. I wasn't looking for the most talented hairstylist. I already have thousands of talented hairstylists working for my company. I was looking for something much more difficult to find." She paused. Character. Everyone remained silent. "I watched 2 women. Both suffered the same tragedy. Both lost successful salons. Both were forced to start again. But hardship changed them differently." She looked towards Sandra. One allowed pain to make her cruel. Then she looked at Chidera. The other allowed pain to make her compassionate. Sandra slowly stepped forward. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were." Vivian looked at her calmly. "No, you didn't. And that's exactly the point. If I had arrived with cameras, bodyguards, and expensive clothes, you would have treated me differently." Sandra lowered her head, ashamed. Vivian continued. "The greatest test of character is how you treat people who cannot do anything for you." No one said a word. The people stood frozen, because everyone knew she was right. Vivian then turned back to Chidera. "My team investigated your story after we met. We didn't only study your business plan. We spoke to your former customers, your neighbors, even Madame Bossy." Chidera looked surprised. Vivian smiled. "Every single person told us the same thing. They said your kindness didn't begin after you lost your salon. It has always been who you are." Chidera could no longer hold back her tears. Vivian held up Chidera's notebook. "This," she said, "is why I came back." She opened it for everyone to see. Most people pray for opportunities, but very few prepare for them. This young woman has spent 2 years preparing for a future she couldn't even see. Then Vivian smiled. "And people like that are the people I invest in." Vivian smiled quietly, then turned to her team. "Bring it in." A large covered display was wheeled to the roadside stand where they stood. One of the assistants removed the black cloth. Beneath it stood a magnificent scale model of a modern beauty salon. Everyone stared in amazement. Above the entrance was a gold sign, Chidera Crown Studio and Academy. Chidera covered her mouth. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Vivian handed her a leather folder. Inside were property documents, architectural drawings, business registration certificates, equipment purchase orders, employment contracts, and one final letter. Vivian smiled. "My company has purchased a commercial property for you. We are building this salon exactly as you designed it in your notebook. Every room, every chair, every detail. We're not changing a thing." Tears streamed down Chidera's face. She could barely speak. Vivian continued, "It will also include a training academy. Every year, 50 young women who cannot afford beauty school will receive free professional training. And you," she smiled, "will lead it." The crowd erupted into applause. She looked towards Sandra. Sandra, who was in tears, wiped her tears. She looked at Vivian, then at Chidera. Her voice trembled. "I spent 2 years blaming everyone. I became angry at customers. I became angry at God. I even became angry at Chidera. When the real enemy was my own heart. I'm truly sorry." "Sandra," Vivian said. Sandra slowly stepped forward. "I made a promise many years ago. I help people rebuild businesses, but I also believe people deserve the opportunity to rebuild themselves." She paused. "I cannot reward pride, but I will never punish genuine repentance." Sandra looked up through tears. "When Chidera's Academy opens, I want you to be one of the instructors." The market fell silent. Sandra was shocked. Vivian continued, "Not because you're perfect, but because your story can teach future apprentices that talent without character is dangerous." Sandra broke down completely. For the first time in years, she cried without anger, without excuses, without blame, only gratitude. She turned to Chidera. "If you'll have me." Chidera smiled. "We started this journey together. Maybe we're supposed to finish it together." Sandra nodded through tears. 6 months later, the city of Enugu gathered for the grand opening of Chidera Crown Studio and Academy. Television stations covered the event live. Madame Bose cut the ceremonial ribbon, tears shining in her eyes, as she watched her former apprentice realize the dream she had refused to abandon. The salon was exactly as Chidera had drawn it years earlier in her notebook. The academy welcomed its first class of young women, many of whom had lost jobs, homes, or hope, just as Chidera once had. Sandra stood proudly among the instructors, teaching advanced hairstyling techniques. This time, she celebrated every student's success instead of competing with them. On the academy's entrance wall, beneath the logo, was a simple inscription: "Talent opened doors. Character determines how far you go." And beside it, in a smaller frame, another message: "Always prepare for the opportunity you're praying for." One quiet afternoon, a frail, elderly woman wearing faded clothes walked into the academy. One of the new trainees smiled warmly. "Welcome, Mama. Please come in." Without asking whether she could pay, she offered her a seat, a bottle of water, and a kind smile. Chidera watched from her office. She smiled to herself. The lesson had been passed on. A fire can destroy a building, but only pride can destroy a future. The opportunities that change our lives rarely announce themselves. They arrive quietly, watching who we become when life has taken everything else away. If you watched till this point, thank you. It means you love impactful stories like this. Subscribe to this channel for more stories like this. You can also watch other stories we have on this channel. I'll see you in the next one.